So today we're actually going to be talking about the spiritual senses, okay? So the reason I'm making this video is because I wanted a better understanding of how I am able to receive messages and signs. I wanted to kind of understand a little bit better how it all happens, and then it led me into the journey of understanding what actual spiritual gifts that I have. And when I was doing research on all of this stuff, I was actually able to remember certain examples of how I've experienced some of these phenomenons, but also how common that all of these traits are for so many different people from all types of walks of life or whatever. Okay, so I thought this would be a really interesting video to put out there for others to understand. So I'm actually looking down because I understand the actual gifts themselves, but I want to make sure I have the names correct. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is the gift of sight. Okay, so seeing things with your third eye, seeing things in a way that is from your mind's point of view. So this could be, when you're talking about sight, it could be that you see past events, present events of something that's happening, but in a different way, like you see it in a different way than it's showing up in the 3D, or it could be things that are happening in the future. Okay, so things that have not happened yet. So this is called clairvoyance. This is one of the major signs and gifts that people say that they have. This is where the whole idea of being psychic comes from. So the definition is to be able to see beyond the range of ordinary perception. Okay, so this is saying having vision not with these two eyes, but with this, and seeing more than meets the eye. So that phrase, you see more than what meets the eye, or there's more than what meets the eye, you see it on a deeper level, but the key word is seeing. Okay, so I'll give you an example of this specific gift that I feel like I have sometimes. I don't know if it's one of my strongest, but it definitely is something I have experienced. So when I was younger, I used to take lots and lots of road trips, and I would, obviously you're looking outside and at the window, looking at all the plains and all the fields, the meadows, and all of that good stuff, right? So there would be certain times, and I'm from the South, so a lot of the times when I'd be traveling, I would be down South, okay? So the energy in the South, energetically speaking, from my perspective, I love the South, but it is it's like if you could imagine air being very thick. There's a lot of like slow moving energy, almost to the point where it's like you can feel all of the challenges that have been brought here. So there's been lots of wars down here. There's been lots of battles, lots of deaths in ways that, weren't natural. I'll put it that way. There's been lots of deaths fueled by hatred, right? So you can feel that. Specifically speaking about Texas, because that's where I'm from, there's certain areas that you just go and you can just feel the difference. And I'm sure this happens everywhere, but there would be certain times when I'd be passing by and we'd be in the car, and I'm little, mind you, I'm like 4, 5, 6 years old, around that age. And I've always been a thinker, but I would see with my eye. I didn't know what the hell it was at first, but I would be able to see plantations, like actual like rows of plants and people like digging and just doing all this stuff, and they would be dressed in really, really old attire. And this is before I even knew what slavery was, okay? Because this is before school taught all of that shit. And I didn't understand it, but I would always be like, how? I was aware that it wasn't what I was seeing in the 3D. I just didn't understand to put the words to it. And I would always just be like, okay, how is it that I'm able to see the past? Like the older I got, the more I would be like, oh, and especially when I would look into books and textbooks and stuff, I would see, all the images of the slaves, doing their crops and all that shit. And it would be like cotton fields is what I would see. But in reality, it was cotton there, but it wasn't people doing the work. So it was like I would be seeing the spirits of those who were there. And I don't know if it's because there were so many souls that experienced that moment that it's able to translate. If you're clairvoyant, it's able to translate into you being able to literally see what they were doing. So I've never actually had the experience to see the future, unless we're talking about dreams. But as far as clairvoyance goes, I do have examples and experiences of when I would be able to see the past. Okay, so it may vary for you. You may see things happening before it happens. You may see things happening right now. So whenever I wanted to understand on a spiritual level, like what clairvoyance means, the messages that I kept getting was when people say like, I see you, but they kind of give you a meaning of like, I see deeper than what you think. Or when people say, oh, I see what you're doing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not physically doing it, but they can feel and they can see through whatever. It's like reading between the lines, but with an actual vision. Like, they can see who you really are. When they say you look into the eyes of someone, you can see who they truly are, their soul. Or even when they say you may know people from your past life, and the way that you know them is because their eyes never change. It's the windows to the soul. So that's just some things that we can say about clairvoyance, okay? The next spiritual gift that you may have is hearing, okay? So hearing. This is called clairaudience, okay? Now, this is one of my favorite ones, okay? Because clairaudience is something that I feel like so many people have experienced, and it is kind of a controversial topic because it does borderline go into that, like how they categorize schizophrenia. I feel like that's something totally connected to this, how they try to, you know, they'll find people's gifts and then they'll put it in a box of where it's bad. So that most people don't want to tap into it, or they have these experiences, but they're like, oh, no, I don't want to be crazy. I don't want to be crazy. So I thought this was very interesting because it would be interesting to tell someone, hey, like, I don't know how I know things. I just hear the answer. Or I don't know how I know things, but something told me. Or they'll say, God told me. But it's like, okay, what is that voice? And the interesting part about clairaudience, there's a specific difference between hearing your mind, you know, that voice that you hear, that you listen to when you're just, you know, going through your day, yourself, basically, your mind, your higher self. But there's a difference in clairaudience when you hear messages, but it's not you. And it sounds so crazy. Like, I'm trying to say this without sounding like crazy or just whatever, but it's like, it's a voice from something higher than you. You understand what I'm saying? And it's like, you just know that that's the right answer. Or you just know that that's something, a benevolent energy. Now, if you hear this and you don't feel like it's a good thing, that's a whole nother thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about benevolent forces that somehow give you a message from the gods. And this, to me, has a lot of synchronistic energy of the planet Mercury, because Mercury is the messenger of the gods. And so a lot of people who have very heavy placements in Mercury, or they are heavily, they have a lot of strong ties with Gemini and Virgo in their chart. I feel like this is something very, very, very common with people who have those placements, okay? Okay, so I'm just going to look down and read it because this one's too long to try to memorize. So the definition of clairaudience is being able to hear messages through words, sound, music, in our own mind's voice, or through someone else's voice within our own mind. So, like I said, there's a clear difference between hearing the answer with your own mind, like just having the intuitive way. And I feel like if you have a lot of Virgo and Gemini, Mercury energy in your chart, you have a lot of experience with this type of energy of being able to kind of answer yourself or talk to yourself, because Mercury deals with, you know, the conversation, the intelligence, the words, communication. So it's able to communicate with thyself. Now, the flip side of this is hearing messages, which I would correlate with the Virgo energy, hearing messages from God itself, because Virgo is supposed to be like the angelic realm brought down to this earthly level. So it's having these messages and these answers in specific, like answers being bestowed upon you, and you not really having a real reason as to how you know. You just know, and you know that it's something that maybe you've asked for in the past. Maybe it's something that you wanted to know more about. I've even heard of people that said they wanted to know certain things from like ancestors or just whatever entities that they follow. And they've had situations where they wake up knowing the answer and then going to look it up themselves and then seeing that it is indeed true. Now, I haven't necessarily had moments where I've had to look it up for myself to see if it's true, but I have had nudges and these premonitions or just answers of who I need to look up, or certain deities that I should look into, or certain figures from my past, or just from the past, shall I say, that would have some sort of in-depth connection and resonance with me that I may not be able to understand or be able to look up. But the actual person or the actual deity, the spiritual energy, the crystal, I've had so many times where that's happened to me where I just hear it and I'm like, let me look that up. You understand what I'm saying? So it's a really trippy thing, because it's one of those things I feel like you can't really explain it unless you have proof that you're correct. But then at the same time, if you can prove it, then most likely people will say, oh, well, you just looked that up. So it's something like, I feel like if you're clairaudient, it's something that only you can understand. And there's so many tarot readers, I feel, and intuitive people that they go through this phenomenon, but it's something that I feel like is so unspoken just because it's literally for you. It's answers for you. Now, how you use this gift and push it outwards to the masses, that's where it becomes something that can actually be beneficial for other people. So I think this is one of those gifts that's really, really special, because I don't feel like everyone has it, but I feel like the people that do, they can attest to how like enormously helpful it is once you actually start to understand what it is and what it can do for you. The message that I got when I was meditating on what clairaudience is, it's when people say certain things like what they really meant to say is ... or what they really mean is ... So sometimes you'll hear someone talking and you'll be like, I feel like they're saying something else, but they're being passive or something like that, right? And so that voice in your head tells you, oh, this is what they're trying to say. It's one of those situations. But again, it's kind of like you only hear it within yourself. So it's something really, really trippy to try to explain to other people who have not gone through this, okay? If you've had experience like that, let me know in the comment section down below, okay? So the next spiritual sense is feeling, okay? So feeling. So not touch, okay? This is feeling, the authentic feel, because as we know in this 3D realm, the body and everything like that is important. But once you elevate towards higher realms, feeling has nothing to do with literally touching. Feeling has a lot to do with just intuitively feeling on the internal spectrum. So when you have a gut feeling, or when you have your heart tells you something, or you get nervous, or you get anxious, okay? There's so many ways to feel different energies. Just like I was saying earlier in the video, when you go through certain areas, certain cities, certain towns, certain rooms within your house, you'll feel an energy shift, okay? So that's the real feeling, okay? Now, when you have the sense of feeling, this is called clairsentinence, okay? Now, the definition for clairsentience is being able to feel emotions connected to self or from someone else. So examples of this are gut feelings, instincts, intuition, feeling the changes in air or energy of rooms, vibes, frequencies. The vibes are blank. So whatever you would put there, that's what that is. That's what that is spoken. When someone says, man, the vibes feel weird here. Or when you say, yo, it feels so good here. Like, I don't know what this energy is that I feel with them, but it feels so good. That's examples of when people are clairsentient, or when they're at least experiencing clairsentient experiences. Okay, so, but also when someone says, it just doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, literally, because you can't feel, it's not feeling like this. It's feeling internally. So when someone says, I can't put my finger on it, but it doesn't feel right, or it just doesn't feel right, that's a huge clairsentient value. I'm trying to see what else I can say about this. So like I said, this one's pretty self-explanatory. I feel like this is something that a lot of people experience, just because I feel like we are all supposed to feel on a deeper level. Especially those who are tapped in. We don't, like, that the whole point of spirituality is kind of walking by signs and walking by the energy, because everything is energy, the frequencies. So when you follow this, you naturally strengthen your ability of clairsentience, in my opinion. But there are some people who feel like they don't have any intuitive direction, and maybe it's because somewhere in their chart along the way, you're supposed to, in this lifetime, correlate with the physical 3D. Maybe you were too instinctive in your past life or something, and so in this life you're supposed to kind of tame that and balance it out by being more 3D. So it maybe just depends on who you are, but I do feel like most people do experience clairsentient situations, okay? So anytime that you felt something and you just knew it was wrong, but you didn't know why, you knew it was going to be wrong if you went through with it, perfect example. So moving on to the next sense is smelling. Now this is one that I feel like so many people would be like, smelling? Like, what do you mean smelling? Yes, you can have spiritual situations dealing with scent, okay? So the phenomenon of smelling things and understanding it on a different level, or smelling things that are not on this 3D realm. Like if you've ever walked into a place and you feel like you smell something, and you ask someone, hey, do you smell that? And they're like, no, like, what are you talking about? Or if you smell something that's connected to something from the past, or something that has significant meaning to you, but it's not really smelling it, it's just your mind giving you that scent. So if it's your food that your grandma used to cook or something like that, or if it's a perfume of a certain person that you're researching and you're like, I've never met this person, but why do I smell what they would have smelled like? It's trippy. It's stuff like that, okay? So this phenomenon is called clairalience, okay? Being able to smell something that isn't really there, remembering a scent of a person. Now this one is trippy because I feel like I've had maybe one or two experiences of this, but I didn't dive deep enough into it to really understand it. I think because I got so tied into the smell that it kind of freaked me out, where I was just like, whoa, let me, like, I don't know what this is. It was kind of scary because I was young and I didn't even understand what spiritual gifts I had. So this is one of the ones where I didn't really do much research into it, and I didn't really try to understand it that much because it freaked me out. So I'm not gonna lie about that, but it's a pretty trippy thing when it happens. But this happens all the time. Like when you go somewhere and you smell something from your childhood, boom, it takes you back to that time, that person, that whatever. When you go somewhere and you smell something from a classroom that you had in kindergarten, and you can smell it, like that's the literal experience of it. But there's people who experience it on deeper levels of people they've never met before. So the next one I have is taste. Okay, so being able to taste what is not present. Okay, so it kind of goes into the same thing of clairalience. I would put them under the same thing, because if you can smell, you can taste, and vice versa. So it's like being able to taste things that are not really there. Now, I've never had experiences with this. I would actually be willing to do more research on this phenomenon, because I don't think I've met anyone who's ever went through this. But there is the phenomenon where people can smell blood or taste blood or iron, and they're not sure why. Now, there could have some scientific reasons as to why that is. Maybe they need iron. I don't know. But that's probably the only example I've actually understood or seen other people go through. Now, the last and final sense that we are going to talk about is knowing, inner knowing. This is kind of tying into that intuitive nature of being clairsentient. But this is different, okay? This is like when you literally have a light bulb moment and you didn't do anything to get it. Maybe you asked for assistance spiritually, but for the most part, you didn't do any work, but you have the answer and you just know, okay? Now, this kind of ties more into your mind's logic, okay? So clairsentient is your heart and your gut, but we're talking about the mind now. So it's more of like your crown chakra inherently getting some sort of information from some type of realm other than the 3D, okay? So this is called claircognizance. Now, you'll hear a lot of people use this word as well, maybe just as much as clairsentience and clairvoyance, okay? So claircognizance is knowing something as fact without learning from an outside source, when spirit passes downloads of truth without effort. This could be of historic things, knowing something about a person that they didn't disclose, being able to receive signs clearly from past or higher realms of entities. So, that's just my definition of it, what I just read to you, okay? So when I was thinking about this one, now this one I'm very familiar with, okay? Now with this is like also tying into that Mercury energy, I would say, as well. And also high priestess, very high priestess like. Oh, I didn't even write that down, but I just felt that when I said it. It's high priestess energy, if you're familiar with tarot. So just knowing, just understanding. So I would tie this into Pisces energy. I would tie this into, I wanted to say Cancer, but I kind of hesitated on that one. So maybe somewhat with that, with the moon energy. So this is like when females just know things, right? So if you're a woman, you know exactly what this is. Being that we may be challenged in aspects of tangible things, so if we're not as strong as the man, or if we're not maybe as fast, depending on who you are, honey, okay? Because I can outrun a lot of them. But if you are a woman, you know what it is to be very intuitive. So you know how you can say things and they happen, because we're very angelic and magical when it comes to speaking things into existence. That's why you have to be very careful. When you can just feel something in your gut and you don't know what it is, but something guides you to find that answer that you were looking for, or you didn't know that you needed to know, but you didn't want to go through it and find out. So this can be kind of a doozy. But the example that I had whenever I was thinking about this is, you got to trust me on this one. I just know, like, you just got to trust me. Like, you don't really have any logical explanation as to how you know, but you know it as fact. You feel it as fact. You know it as in your head as a factual statement or a factual event or experience. And this one can be tricky because you don't have any tangible evidence. And on this realm, a lot of people need tangible evidence. But when you're talking about spiritual senses, this is something that you just know. You just know. What? K-N-O-W. You just know it. So that has a lot of ties with Aquarius, I would say. So it's kind of like having this determined mindset, but it's something that you felt. Well, I'm not going to say felt. It's something that you know. So I think a lot of people experience this when they have dreams, and they get messages in their dreams, or when they see someone and they just feel something off and something tells them, hey, pay attention to this, and this. So Again, it's very, very closely tied to clairsentience, but I think the difference with this is sometimes you can literally look these things up and then you be correct about it. With clairsentience, sometimes you don't really have the wiggle room to actually prove it to other people, like pull it up as a historical document or something like that, because it's more of an intuitive thing. But with this claircognizance, this is the masculine aspect of that. So there is like literal proof, physical proof, material, outsourced, but you don't know where you got it from. But if you wanted to look it up, you could find this. So let's say you meet someone and this is the person that your friend is dating, and you're like, friend, I don't know about this one, like something doesn't seem right about them, like I feel like there's something real fishy about this person, right? So that's your clairsentient value kicking in. But when it becomes claircognizant, you may have a dream and this person says something that makes you like, oh my gosh, let me look this person up, and you find out that they are with something that's terrible. Okay, and you find this out on their record or something like that, or you find out that they were lying about something that you didn't know what it was, but then you looked it up and you found it. So that's claircognizance, because you can go show that to someone, like, look, this is what I found on this person. Now this one can show up as being crazy too. I feel like a lot of women go through this when they have a gut feeling that their guy or whatever is cheating on them or something, for example, and they literally find the text messages or the phone calls or whatever the case may be. Okay, but this is that type of energy, just to make it on a lower vibration so you can understand what I'm saying. All right. So I also wrote down with this, being in flow with the right vibe is important with this, because you could have downloads from higher realms, but they could be from lower frequencies. So this is where it becomes tricky, or it becomes vital for you to be very spiritually or vibrationally clear, knowing who are the forces here to help you and who's not, knowing what is good energy and what is bad energy, etc., etc. Okay, so I encourage you, if you are feeling any clairsentient values or claircognizance, it's very important for you to stay spiritually balanced and understand where your place is, who you are, and what energy forces you are feeling. Because if you're in a negative vibration, you may play into the negative forces that were already there that you may not be able to see if you're not clairvoyant or something like that. You understand what I'm saying? So it gets pretty tricky, but it's also all about, wherever your mind is, that's where your spirit will be in the spirit realm. So you want to make sure that you're aware of what you're doing, you're researching, you're I would say testing your abilities, but being very safe when doing so. But that's really the only way that you can learn it, is by going through it. Okay, so that is my take on the clairs, as I'm going to call them. All the senses that you have. Now, I'm sure there's so many more, and I'm sure that there's hybrids of these, just simply because I've experienced a few of these. So I'm sure there's so many different kinds, but I thought I would just, put this out there, and I thought it'd be really interesting for those of you who are like, I know that I know things, but I'm not sure what the fuck they are. What do I call them? How do I look them up if I don't know what they're called? There you go. Okay, so do all the research that you want. And until next time, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed, doing my little lecture for you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.